Welcome to the Solution Breakdown. I'm Mark Baker, and I'm joined here by Mitch Kofsky. How you doing, Mitch?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Excited to do this. You and I
Yeah,
have been
yeah,
talking about this for a while, so
yeah. I know,
might
right?
as well. Might as well, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, we'll probably have a good light show today. I'll tell you. I mean, you do the Lord's work. I'll tell you that much by talking about the Sixers. I don't know if I can do that.
Dude, you know how hard it is? Like, seriously, I get DMs every day saying, like, how you doing this? How you doing that?
Yeah.
The Sixers are so bad. And I'm like, dude, I just love basketball at the end of the day. You know
Yeah.
me. We go shoot hoops all the time.
Sure.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just like I had enough to an extent. So
It, well, I mean, I was offered a ticket last year, like a package of tickets.
right.
And someone was like, "Hey, you want to come?" It's like, no charge. I was like, I think I have anything else to do. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it.
Bro, I don't know how you did that. I don't know how you turned down a free ticket. For
Well,
me, I might have gone. I might have gone for a free ticket. I might have gone.
I don't know. Probably after the first quarter, second quarter, I'm like, I'm not. We're not doing this anymore.
Nah. Nah. I haven't gone to a game in like 2 years. I haven't gone to Sixers in 2 years, dude.
I haven't either. I mean, I love going to Flyers games, but I haven't been to a Sixers game for a little bit. Yeah.
I haven't been to a Flyers game since I was a kid. So,
Really?
nah. More of a basketball and WWE guy, not Flyers.
Not even see your boy Mitchkov.
Dude, I live him. It's like I don't have to go anywhere. I'm like, I'm here. I'm here. All right, let's go.
So let's do it. All right. So we, had a couple of topics today. First off, I'm sitting. I went to a happy hour, a colleague retirement party, and I look at the TV, and the first thing I see Micah Parsons traded to Green Bay, and my first reaction is that I'm a little shocked. I let it simmer a little bit, and it doesn't surprise me. Mitch, what were your initial thoughts?
So I was actually in my spot right here, just editing, doing some stuff, and my phone blows up, just like out of the blue. Ian Rappaport, Michael Parsons traded. So I'm like, what could they possibly get from Micah Parsons, right? 5 picks, 6 picks, 7 picks, 8 picks. No, 2 firsts and Kenny Clark, a defensive tackle. And here's the funniest thing. You ready? Trey Lance got 3 first-round picks. And I'm like, what is Jerry doing? I love Jerry Jones. Just stay there forever, please.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Listen. It was clear that the relationship wasn't working. It got weird. It's coming to a game eating nachos and coming to the preseason game eating nachos. It's very clear based off of body language that this ship has sailed a long time ago. And I mean, this is a little bit different than what us has done. I mean, usually they'll pay guys for over the market value. It's always funny because after Zeke's rookie year, they I mean, the production and the level of explosiveness went down. Yet they paid him and they kept him around, and then they brought him back. I mean, Dak they paid Dak after a severe ankle injury. They've had a track record of paying guys, and right. I mean, rightfully so. I mean, some of these guys are. I think a lot of teams out there would love to have the intangibles that a Dak Prescott would have. They probably would like to have a CeeDee Lamb. Like I can't blame Dallas for signing players. This is just a little bit of a different move for them because they, throughout the process, I was I'm not shocked at this point, but throughout the process, this was if you had asked me 4 or 5 weeks ago, would they have traded Micah Parsons? I would have said no. And knowing Jerry, they'll pay him. They'll pay him some max deal, and they'll make him like the largest non-quarterback in in the history of the NFL. Like it would not have surprised me if they had went that route.
Right there with you, bro. I'm right there with you. Micah Parsons is a talent that you can't afford to let go. He was the face of the franchise, the face of Texas, actually, if you want to be to extent. He's the face of the whole state, and you just let him go for peanuts, and now he's actually the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, a 4-year deal. And I'm just like the Green Bay Packers Eagles championship game now. NFC championship game, that's where I take it.
Well, that is a good point. I mean, because ultimately Green Bay knows that they have something in Jordan Love, and they know they have something with that roster. And so what was really missing last year? I mean, I always look back to that Thursday night game that they had against Detroit, where Detroit had a couple of fourth and shorts that they just said, listen, like, balls on the table, like they just literally showed their nuts on the table and like, listen, we're going for it. Like, what's coming. And I think they definitely converted 2 down the stretch. They might have converted 3. But what they're looking for that game record. Because I always look at a team like, listen, as dysfunctional as Pittsburgh is, what they have done well at, they have those guys not on the back end, but on the front 7 that can really wreck that game late in the fourth quarter. They can be down 13-7. All of a sudden, they get a big defensive play and they flip the game. And I think that's what Green Bay is looking for. Because ultimately, right, you now have, I mean, there are a lot of questions in the NFC North, and the Packers have the least amount of questions. But, it's the level of which, like, Jordan Love can be productive. He has shown that at times that he can be a top 10 quarterback. Detroit, yeah, they still have, Jared Goff, and to what extent, I think we'll find out this year about how much of that was the coordinators and how much of that really was Dan Campbell. But I imagine that they'll still be in the hunt, and they'll still be in competition for the division. And you also have a couple of wild cards, which is the Bears with Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. And also, you can't count out Kevin O'Connell. To what extent J.J. McCarthy can play, I'm not really sure. But I have a lot more confidence considering that, what Kevin O'Connell did with Sam Darnold. So you look at the division. You look at the division pivots towards offense. You have 4. I mean, 4 offensive coaches in that. Dan Campbell's technically an offensive coach, but he brings a bit of a defensive mindset. You have 4 offensive coaches. You're gonna have to. I mean, they were 1-5 in division last year.
Yeah,
and they were what? They were 11. They were 11-6 last year. Like they were 1-5, and they really should have gone 0-6. If you don't remember, against that game against Chicago, it was a missed field goal on the road that won them that game. It's like they should have been 0-6 in that division. Like, they're looking at that division. They need a guy that can, like, it's funny because Jerry's like, well, we want to be able to stop the run. And that's our priority. Okay. Well, Green Bay, you look at Philly, you look at the Rams, they want to muck up the game. They want to get after. They want that guy late in the fourth quarter to really blow up the game, make that strip sack. They want that type of guy. It is. Like, I'm not necessarily, dogging on the move. I don't think the move is bad, but if you look at the priorities between 2 teams, it is laughable. Here you got Dallas being like, well, we want to be able to stop the run, and Green Bay's looking at like, listen, like, we have a chance. We have a chance here to go to the Super Bowl. Outside of the Eagles, there's not really that clear challenger for Philly. So we want to be able to have a guy that if we have to go on the road, like we know can get after the passer. We know that, we're not really going to be sending blitzes out of the wazoo. We're going to need to put guys in coverage and bring 4 guys. And we need a guy that we know that can really get after the passer. So, I think this is a good move. This is a good move for Green Bay for now. What are your thoughts?
So for me, right, I kind of see it as a reset button a little bit. Jerry Jones is trying to stay out the limelight, be like, okay, Micah trying to keep him, no buzz. Micah was sleeping during the preseason game. He was on the table sleeping.
Yep.
So I feel like, okay, he's given up. It's time to reset, retool. Trayvon Diggs is coming off an injury. You still got him. You still got all the assets there, but I don't see them going anywhere. I see them getting 5 wins max, 5 or 6. So I kind of see it as them taking a little bit of a reset, even though those draft picks, they're going to be late 20s. They're going to be late 20s, maybe even 30s. Who knows where they're going to be with Green Bay? But they got to do something, and I think Jerry Jones is taking a step back.
I mean, Jerry has been a little bit unconventional, but I'm not. Listen, I'm not going to. There's a lot of people out there that want to throw Brian Schottenheimer under the bus, and already it ain't gonna work. But if I look at a situation like New England, where they had tried the Gerard Mayo experiment, and they couldn't really get a lot of Mayo magic from that, so they said, listen, no, yep, we'll pivot off of it. Even after a year, I mean, in today's NFL, you're like, it's not unheard of for a guy to just get one season to be like, nope, yeah, you did that 15 to 20 years ago. It's what are you doing? How are you? It's like the pearl clutching of the NFL. How dare you do that? But now we've seen with Gerard Mayo. I remember about 7 years ago, it was with Steve Wilkes with the Cardinals. It was just like, this isn't working. And they might be a little bit fast, but it would not surprise me after this year they just say, listen, it's not going to work. Now, ultimately with Jerry likes a guy who likes a yes man. He likes people to say yes around him. I would not suspect I really think in Dallas it could get really ugly, because I don't suspect. I mean, they might let Shoddy go after 1 year, but knowing Jerry, they'll sign another yes man, and we'll be in the same position. I don't see Dallas doing what my Chargers have done, which is it was clear with Brandon Staley, it ain't this isn't working. Let's go get Jim Harbaugh. I can't see Dallas doing that, and because Jerry has not shown that he can do that. Jerry's ego has not been able to be quelled, and he won't let it. And so that's ultimately I think Dallas is in trouble for a long time, and they got some picks, and they know how to develop personnel, but it's always comes back to Jerry. And I think they're in big trouble. I really think they're in big trouble, Mitch.
Oh my God, yeah. If we go through the schedule right now, it's not looking good. I mean, if we could break down the schedule right now, but we'll be here all freaking day talking about the schedule. But I'm just like, yeah, it is not looking good. I could see them taking a step back, like I said earlier, but we're gonna have to wait and see on that.
Who do they got week 2 after the Eagles?
I got you. Give me 1 second here. I know they're losing week 1. I know that on my birthday. So it's just like I already know they're the Giants. They got the Giants.
I mean, depending on where the Giants are at, if
they might actually lose to the Giants.
Yeah,
their defense is really good.
Yeah,
their defense it's gotten a lot better. So.
Yeah, and Russ has been able to show that he can provide some stability. It didn't end well in Pittsburgh, but he can show that he provided stability to that offense. Honestly, for the first time that Pittsburgh has had some type of stability on offense for since Big Ben. So it wouldn't surprise me. Who they have for week 3?
Week 3 they got the Bears. They got the Bears.
Yeah, that's
another loss.
Good.
I'm taking the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, would it surprise? I mean, listen, would it surprise me if they went 0-3? No. But if they're looking at, I mean, list off who they got week 4, 5, 6. Let's see.
They got They got Packers Sunday Night Football.
In Green Bay?
In Dallas.
In Dallas.
Then they got the Jets in New York. Then they got the Panthers in Carolina. And then they got the Commanders after that. Then the Broncos.
Their schedule gets tough after their schedule gets tough. It wouldn't surprise me if I through the first 5 weeks. I mean, on their best case scenario, they're where they were last year, and they're sitting at 2-2. I'm not sure when their bye is, but I don't think this is going to end well at all. I think this is gonna be a by week by Thanksgiving we're gonna be like this is.
Let me see, who are they playing on Thanksgiving anyways? The Chiefs.
Oh yeah.
They're playing the Chiefs on Thanksgiving.
Oh man. But this brings me what I want to talk about next, because ultimately Dallas has a couple of Chicago being one of those teams that we talk about making a jump. We see with the Bears, there's been a lot of development with frankly, I hadn't heard Ben Johnson speak ever. So I never heard him actually talk. But hear what he's doing with Caleb Williams in training camp. He's frankly quite hard on Caleb. And so that's it's also a little bit of a weird story about how with the backup. He likes the backup. He's praising Tyson Bagent. That's a little bit weird, but that's an example of a team that, hey, we expect to make a jump, because honestly, if it's an 8-9 campaign, oh man, Caleb's going to get crushed. Another team that I want to talk about, but that I really want to focus on, because they've gotten a lot of attention lately. Quite a bit lately. As you know, Seattle had signed Sam Darnold. They had also acquired Cooper Kupp. They have the Jackson Smith and Jigma. Pretty good. They have a couple of studs on the back end. Mike McDonald has shown some promise, and they won 10 games last year. Recently there's been a lot of hype, and I just want to reflect on that for a few minutes. When Sam Darnold got drafted, it was a weird situation in New York. This was at a time, and Peyton Manning was like, well, Adam Gase, he got a glowing review from Adam Gase. And the Jets, after, ironically, with Todd Bowles, and they said this wasn't going to work out. And this was a time. This was a weird time, and I think that we're out of it. And the Chargers did something like this as well. And the Dolphins are currently in this situation too, where they had decided, we're going to draft. We're not draft, but we want to sign. This is the smartest guy in the room. How brilliant, how intelligent, the intellectual of football. Adam Gase. Now you see it in Miami with Mike McDaniel. The Chargers had this with Brandon Staley. All the the AWS statistics and all the analytics at that time was just starting to enter the game. And it was a weird situation because Miami's dealing with that problem today, and Sam Darnold dealt with it about 6-7 years ago. Because ultimately you draft a guy number 2 overall with a guy that not really proven as a head coach. His only claim to fame was working with Peyton Manning, and Peyton Manning ultimately said like this is, gave him it gave him a glowing review, and ultimately it was an utter disaster. It wasn't a defensive coach. We talk about a lot in the NFL, the coach quarterback combination, and how a defensive coach and a quarterback, like, you're holding the guy back. But in Sam Darnold's case, that wasn't the case with Adam Gase, and that wasn't the case when he went to Carolina with Matt Rule. Those are two guys that they're not getting. Matt Rule went back to college. Carolina said, "Why don't you just go back to college? I think you're probably better there." And Adam Gase ain't getting a head coaching job. So then he goes to San Francisco, and he sits behind Brock Purdy. And ultimately, he gets signed the next year. He gets signed the next year with Kevin O'Connell, and he has a great season. He has a great season. It particularly didn't end well, but he had a great year. And then he gets, and now he's in that position with Seattle. Now he's got a defensive coach. In terms of offensive production last year with Geno Smith, they were about middle of the road in terms of points per game, yards per game. Defensively, they're extremely jump. My question for you, Mitch, is do you see Seattle winning the division outright? Is it clear that they're the best team in that division?
So for me, first I want to talk about I want to actually bring up Cooper Kupp real quick, because Cooper Kupp right now, I don't think he's not exactly the same player as he was years back due to injuries. He's not going to be a Triple Crown winner like he was, but he's still going to be a threat that defenses are going to have to scheme against. So with Sam Darnold and his arm and Cooper Kupp, that could be a nice little duo we see there in Seattle. And then you have Kenneth Walker, who I'm actually a big fan of Kenneth Walker, honestly, because of his attack in the red zone, him getting through the holes and everything. Kenneth Walker is a very underrated running back, and I actually think he deserves more respect in NFL. So Seattle got that going for them. Jackson Smith and Jigba, another underrated guy. I'm telling you, Seattle's got some underrated guys for their roster. And even on their defensive side of the ball, DeMarcus Lawrence and all those guys. I actually forgot they had a guy named Kobe Bryant. They have a guy named Kobe Bryant on their team, so isn't that automatically a win? I'm just saying that's automatically a win here for me. So in the standings, let me look that up real quick. I want to see who's in the standings real quick with Seattle. So you got the Cardinals, the Rams, and the Niners. So as of right now, with the moves that the Niners have made, yes, they got injury concerns for McCaffrey and all those guys. I'm still going to go with 49ers at the 1. 2, I'm going to go with the Rams because, how far they went last year. They still got a very good defense. I got the Seattle Seahawks 3rd as of right now, above the Arizona Cardinals. I think that's a good spot for them, missing the wild card by a little bit. And then next year, we'll see that jump. So as of right now, I got San Francisco, the Rams, Seattle, and then the Cardinals in the NFC West. So that's what I got for Seattle.
I the other day in the past 3 seasons, they had won 27. They have 27 wins in the past 3 years. I'm thinking to myself, who does that sound like?
Yeah.
A team that drafts well on defense, especially on the back end, has been somewhat a little bit below or above average at quarterback. Has had a good off season. Now defensive coach with Pete Carroll for a while. It still is and was a defensive culture. I look at in a division with with 2 offensive stalemates. I mean Lamar and the Ravens. I mean, yeah, Harbaugh's a defensive coach, but their identity is really centered around Lamar. But I look at a team like Seattle and I bring up Baltimore because Seattle reminds me a lot like Pittsburgh. When it jumped out at me like 20. Who did we talk about 3 or 4 years ago? Now they're exhausting everybody. Now it's like for Christ's sake, just lose 4 games and just get a high draft pick. You know what I mean? Let's stop hanging on with this. But 3 years ago, let's not forget it, Mitch, that it was Tomlin has not lost, has not had a losing season. And we look at that today and it's like, well, they get bounced in the first round of the playoffs, or they narrowly miss the playoffs. And I'm sitting there with Seattle. It's like this could get weird. This could really get weird if you go 9-8, 9-8, 8-9. This could get really weird because ultimately, then you have a decision to make. Is that you can sit around and be like, the Sam Darnold thing didn't work, but what do you like? Look at what Pittsburgh has done. I mean, like Pittsburgh wasn't looking ideally to go with Aaron Rodgers, but they're so middle of the road that they're not really going to be in line for any good quarterback draft capital. So this could get really weird where you have you can develop you can develop talent. I mean, if Kevin, like you were saying with Kenneth Walker, I mean, if he can stay healthy, I mean, he's an absolute baller. Like you really have something there. And Jackson Smith and Jigma, I mean, it has been clear that he can show that he can make that jump and be a number 1 guy. But it gets weird because being in that division, let's say Stafford starts 12 games, and let's say an ideal scenario, he starts 13. Let's say 13 games. Let's give him like 13 games. You're not telling me that Jimmy Garoppolo can't go 2-2 in a 4-game stretch without Stafford, and the Rams are sitting at 10-7, 11-6, and also let's not forget that the 49ers have the easiest schedule in the NFL this year. That and I'm not going to sit there and jump on the hipster Arizona train. Like I think they're out on Kyler Murray. I think this is probably his final year in Arizona. But I mean, you're in similar to Pittsburgh. You're in a division with two stalemates, like or 2 teams that are going to or have some type of advantage. I don't know with Seattle. This could get weird if you go 9-8. This isn't we went 9 and we barely missed the playoffs, or we make the playoffs and we get bounced in the first round. It could get kind of weird because we now look at Pittsburgh and we say about Pittsburgh like oh, here we go again, another 9-8 season, another 10-7 season. Oh, well, would you look at that? They got trounced in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten weird.
Yeah. So actually, here's the schedule for the not San Francisco, Seattle. Here's actually the schedule. The first game, they got the 49ers. Then they got Pittsburgh. Then they got New Orleans, who I honestly believe New Orleans is going to go 0-17. I don't see them winning a single game this year. I really don't. Arizona, okay. Then they got Tampa Bay. That's going to be a tough game. Tampa Bay is good. A lot of people overlook Tampa Bay. Jacksonville, I think Trevor Lawrence is the most overrated quarterback in the NFL. I've been saying that ever since he was in college. Houston, then they got a bye week after that. Then you got the Commanders, Arizona again, the Rams, Tennessee, Vikings. They got a pretty decent schedule there. They got to beat Carolina here, but they're going to be borderline, like I said. I think they're going to be 9-8. I'll give them 9-8. I think they're generous.
That's fair. I think that's absolutely fair. And listen, this is the and this is the risk ultimately. Is that with Minnesota, like why are we talking McCarthy? Well, it's because of what Kevin O'Connell did with an aging and brittle Kirk Cousins, and what he did with Sam Darnold. Like right. That's the difference here. Is that now you don't have the luxury of like what they call a tall Sean McVay. Now you're the guy that's like they're looking to. Hey, like you might not have that guy, that guru next to you, but we expect you to be that guy. It's a lot. It's a lot to And listen, like I'm not saying I was the biggest Zach Wilson guy of all time. When whatever Zach Wilson go his thing, I'm like, listen, like you try, like the Jets haven't had a quarterback, since Joe Namath back in the 70s. They've had a bunch of middle to the line and quite frankly, quite underwhelming under quarterback talent. Like and partially that's not necessarily on the guy. It's more necessarily on the franchise and their ability to surround this guy with talent, with proper coaching. Like I sit around it, like, and this is the same thing with Trevor Lawrence, is that we sit around and we're like, the guy's not a bust, but it's not. It's clearly people are acknowledging that, like, hey, this is not, like this might not, if this doesn't work this year with Liam Cohen, like we're out on this.
Yeah.
But think about it. Think about it this way: is that ultimately this is ultimately the trouble of really analyzing quarterback talent. Is that now we're in a position, like, it's easy to say because there were so many detractors against Zach Wilson's game. Oh, he's a bust. Well, if you don't remember, in 2021, there were people calling Trevor Lawrence they were comparing him to John Elway. This was a pick. This was you can't miss. You can't miss here. This is a can't miss pick. This is one of the best quarterback prospects of all time. And it is, he has shown flash.
Yeah.
But the thing, it's that ultimately, I'm like, and my point is that put Zach Wilson with Kevin O'Connell, and do you get the same results? And my answer to that would be, I think you get something similar. I think there's a skill set that Sam has that Wilson has. But I listen, just based off of defensive talent and offensive talent alone, I think they can get to 9 wins. But ultimately, it's the same thing that happened with Minnesota last year. Is that when really the chips are on the table, and you got defenses unloading the tank, is Sam Darnold really going to be able to make plays down the stretch of the season? Like he can show flashes, maybe it wouldn't surprise me, maybe against an Arizona, he has a great game, and maybe against that game against Tampa, he goes out there and he balls out. But what happens in week 17, week 18 in the wild card game? Because we saw what happened last year. It wasn't even a home game for the Rams last year at that wild card game. They were playing in Arizona. Like that was a very advantageous situation, and especially after a loss that cost them the division. They were handed a good opportunity, and they got their ass kicked. Because partially, I think that like you can scheme something up, but when it gets in December, when it gets in January, tape on you. We have a full season of tape. Guys are playing through injury. It gets more physical. It's like you're gonna hold on to that ball and you're gonna try to make a play, but I mean the level of intensity really ramps up. I just don't really buy it with this guy. I just don't buy that he's the guy. He's gonna be he's going to be the best quarterback in that division and going to lead them to the division. I'm sorry, man. I buy it.
Yeah. I get it. I get it totally.
But I want to go over something because we talked a little bit about the Rams. We talked a little bit about 49ers. We talked about Green Bay putting their nuts on the table and being like, listen, we want to go win a Super Bowl. We think we have enough. Jordan Love has shown at times that he can sling it around the yard. He can get a little sloppy sometimes. But let's talk about a team for a second that actually won the Super Bowl last year. I want to for a second not to just go over. This has been a very interesting offseason that I think with the level of information that we have out there, has been a little bit more interesting. I remember about 12 years ago when the Ravens beat the 49ers. And the big question was, is Joe Flacco elite? And I mean, I wasn't even 18 at the time. I remember it was like, yeah, he is. You know what I mean? Like 11 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He beat Manning, Brady. He beat Colin Kaepernick, who was better than sliced bread at the time. And a rookie and Andrew Luck. Like, he slayed the dragon. And I mean, most notably, he beat Manning and Brady. And the question was, is this guy elite? And the universal answer was yes. And ultimately, it's hard to say no. A guy is not elite when he goes out there and he balls in the biggest moment. It's hard to say that a guy is not elite. And this has been a very curious offseason for the Eagles, because ultimately, with the more information that we have about quarterback play, and the more information and the more knowledge that's out there, and the more insight in terms of quarterback value, the question has been with Jalen Hurts. It's that, is the guy elite? And let me defend Eagles fans. Not only did the guy win the Super Bowl, he was not a liability. He went out there when he needed to make the plays. And not only did he make them, he was absolutely magnificent. This was not a Trent Dilfer in 2000 where it's like, he made the plays when he had to, but he just didn't really look good most of the time. But when he had to make a play here and there, he could make it. It wasn't that situation. Jalen Hurts was money.
Yep.
And to put a rookie at number 5 in the anonymous executive poll in their top 10, they put Jaden Daniels. And this is an old story, but I think this kind of goes back into, it's like, is it really realistic for the Eagles to repeat? I think this is a good and interesting point. And what does the league say about the Eagles? And what is this about how we view, how we view the last 25 years of NFL football, and how we view not only even the past 25 years, the past 10 years. Because ultimately, and coming back to defending Eagles fans here, is that the guy, we're judging a guy based off of one season. Yeah, yes, he did take them to the NFC Championship game, and he looked ultimately brilliant. But I will say this, because to draw a comparison, everyone's like, Kansas City is not winning all those one-score games. They're going to fall off. Well, how about let's say this with Washington? They're not going to convert all those fourth downs again. It's not realistic that they're going to, which was a big part of their in-game success. I mean, they overachieved winning 12 games because they had that like riverboat mentality, that riverboat gambler type of mentality, similar to Detroit. But they're not always going to convert that. If we're going to say that about Kansas City winning all those close games, we have to have that same type of realism when it comes to Washington converting those fourth downs. And will they take a step back? Yeah, they might take a step back. And let's not forget. Detroit in that divisional round was much talented. But I can't imagine a team that was more riddled with injury than Detroit last year. It really was an overachieving situation here. Mitch, I just want to. Do you? What is your initial thoughts about not only Jalen Hurts being a quarterback that's right for this Eagles team? What do you think about Jalen Hurts as a guy that can maybe not only maybe win this year, but maybe even win a couple of Super Bowls? Do you see that being a likely case?
Yes, I could see that in multiple ways. First off, his leadership. First off, like if anyone's seen this guy's leadership on the field, off the field, it is tremendous. It is off the charts. And second, it's the mentality. He got the Jordan mentality, Kobe mentality, all that stuff. He's taking information in from the greatest of all times, Michael Jordan, Derek Jeter, on how to win some more. And he's got the perfect team around him, dude. He's got the greatest offensive line in the season last year, one. Two, Saquon Barkley had one of the best one-year seasons in NFL history. He should have broke the record, but that's another story. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, one of the best duos in the whole league. Dallas Goedert, who's one of the best blocking tight ends in the league today. And then you look on the defensive side of the ball with all these younger guys like Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and you have these guys coming up, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith. I can go on and on. Andrew Makobo, those guys. So they are built for a rebuild in the future, and it's a chance for them to become a dynasty. So I can see them becoming a dynasty within the next 2 or 3 years. Do I have them winning the Super Bowl this year? Maybe. I would not be shocked if they don't win. If they do not win this year, they'll be back in the Super Bowl the following year. It's either going to be one or the other, right? The Philadelphia Eagles are built for success. They got the GM for it. The beginning of Howie Roseman's tenure with the GM, all the draft picks being flops, I can go through the whole thing. And now he's like flipped it all around, and it started with what was it, Jordan Davis, I think, and then just to go on and on from there. And then Nick Sirianni, you and I talked before, we're not the biggest fans of Nick Sirianni. We're not. But he is fitting the mold. He's got the mindset. He's like the Eagles cheerleader that is a coach, which is like what we need. The Eagles need someone like that who can hype the guys up, can rile them up, and all that. So Nick Sirianni is still – I'm not the biggest fan of him, but I got to give him credit where it's due. Despite all the flowers, the rock, paper, scissors, and that. But yeah, they are definitely built for a future. And with Jalen Hurts at the helm being ranked 19 in the top 100, don't even get me started. Jaden Daniels is 21. Jared Goff is 15 on that list. So it's like, don't even get me started on that. But yeah.
Here's where I think it becomes a little bit of an obstacle. And listen, I was wrong last year. I with Sirianni yelling at the fans
Yep.
after the bye week, the whole AJ Brown reading a book situation. You got Sirianni yelling at assistant coaches. I thought the noise would eventually catch up to them. I thought the noise would eventually catch up to them. And to their credit, I mean, they went out and I mean, that's where the games are played. But I will say this, because ultimately this is where Jalen Hurts really needs to prove himself, and it might not happen this year. This might not be the season where it happens. Jalen Hurts, when he's asked to throw over 40 times, is 0-5. Mahomes, who we kicked his ass in the Super Bowl, is like 38-11.
Yeah.
When he's asked to throw 40 times, that's a big question. And I ultimately listen. He is Jalen Hurts has a very unique skill set. It's a very odd skill set, but his strength as a quarterback, it helps the running game. It's absolutely perfect. And it almost, and when I look at this team, at times it reminds me of, I mean, listen, I wasn't around the 90s, but you hear so much about the Cowboys' history. I might as well have been alive for it all, because ultimately,
Right.
I'm like, I wasn't alive in 1992 or 93. But you hear about it. They all let you know in Dallas about how great that those 90s teams. I might as well have been there. You hear about them. And honestly, I draw a little bit of similarities in terms of style, in terms of swagger. But ultimately, in terms of this year, I don't have them repeating. I don't have them repeating at all, because this is the reality of the NFL today. The only team in the past 20 years to repeat was Kansas City. And let's not forget with Kansas City was that they had a couple of bad losses, and they had most notably a loss against the Raiders on Christmas Day. I remember where I was when I was watching that game. It was one of the goofier games that I've ever watched. Raiders only attempted like 8 passes that entire game. They started 8 tunnel. And it was a very bizarre game. And that was an ugly loss, which, it did set the stage for them to then to button themselves up, which a team like Kansas City, they know how to button themselves up late. And that starts with the head coach.
Yep.
What benefited the Eagles last year was that after their bye, they scaled back the offense, and there were a multitude of games where Jalen Hurts was thrown under 25 times, and you could say, well, that was Saquon, but they at the bye week they scaled the offense back. You can obviously speculate, but it's like, yeah, you have no idea that Saquon's going to have arguably the best season that a running back has ever had. You don't really know that he's going to have that. They scaled the offense back, and ultimately that Cleveland game happened exactly at the right time, because ultimately this is a game in October. It's a game in October that ultimately the team has a lot more time. They're not staring at, oh yeah, we've got to go on the road next week, or the playoffs start next week, and we're staring at we're 2-3, 2-3 down the stretch, and we're really struggling to get in. The Eagles didn't have that problem last year. They won like 14-15 last year. They didn't have the luck. They had the luxury of getting their struggles out early. Because I'll tell you, right? And the Eagles play the Raiders, but I'll just use this example just to just to make the point here. Let's say that they were playing the Giants. Let's say they lose to the Giants at home, and the Giants are 2-11, and they lose to the Giants at home, and the Eagles are maybe 8-5. Like what happens? And that does matter. That really does matter. And the difference that Kansas City had is that when you have the quarterback, you have the coach, and you have one or two, you have maybe a good defensive coordinator, which the Eagles do have. In terms of personnel, I mean, like Kansas City has like a Chris Jones, and Jalen Carter arguably is, I think, will cement himself as the best defensive tackle in all of football. But you have it on the defense. You know when push comes to shove that you're going to be able to. If you got Vic Fangio, you're going to be all right. But yeah. The question becomes Andy Reid's a big part of why Kansas City repeated. Mahomes obviously is, and you have a guy like Kelsey. It's with the Eagles. The question is that you are now the hunted. Not only are you, the Eagles were arguably one of the more louder teams in the NFL. I think the Jets always seem to take the cake in that, but the Eagles were the loudest team in the NFL. But now you become a loud organization, and now you are the hunted. And now everyone's gonna give you their best shot. We now have a whole offseason of tape. And also it's a loud media market. And you watch what happened in 2023. They were 10-1, and they got a big part of that was a part of all the manufactured media drama. That does play a factor in it, as opposed to maybe good old Midwest and Kansas City. That really does matter. It's hard to imagine that being the hunted and maybe staring at like a 7-5 late in the year. I think that might not be an ideal. That may hurt them down the road, unless they're 13-1. They're 13-1 down the stretch, and that legitimately could happen too. There's a couple of questions, but ultimately with how today's NFL is, just teams adapt. Teams are gonna they know they can't stop the tush push, so they're gonna try to find ways to not put you in that position. The NFL is a league that has gotten way smarter, and they know how to adapt. It might take them sometimes a year or two, but I see them as the ultimately the challenger of the NFC, of course, and they're obviously the best team in the conference. And I will say, and as a defensive Eagles fans, that why the hell is Baltimore and Buffalo more Super Bowl favorites than the Eagles? They can't even beat Kansas City. They haven't shown that they can beat Kansas City. So I will say that the Eagles are the favorite to win the Super Bowl. But I just, at the end of the day, I think that when you become the hunted, it just is like, we had a whole off season to just talk about it, but it's a little different when you're now the hunted in the season. I could think of a couple of examples, but I don't know. I just don't see them repeating.
It's tough. I've had this conversation many times with people in the Hardcore Sports Network, just people in general, and most of these guys are one of the most realistic people I even know in my life, and even they are going, Mitch, they're not winning the Super Bowl this year. They're missing a CB2. The CB2 is pretty much one of the biggest positions in football, and you look at the wide receivers that the Eagles are going up against this year, and we need someone to fill in that void. Is that going to be Cooper DeJean over there? Pretty much, yes. Pretty much. Slay is gone. He's in Pittsburgh. He's still in PA State, but I'm still worried about that CB2, and that's going to come back to haunt us. Yes, you did get like a tackle here and there. You did get a couple players here, a wide receiver, but that's still the biggest void. So that's going to come back to haunt us. Don't forget about the CB2.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a big ask. I mean, in terms of production, you think that you're not losing much with a Darius Slay, with a Brandon Graham, but a CJ Gardner Johnson. I mean, you don't think you're missing much when you let those guys go. You're like, we've got it in Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. What are you talking about? But you lose that leadership, you lose that veteran. Now you're putting the pressure on those guys to fill those positions. Cooper DeJean was like, if they keep him in the slot, I mean, he can arguably be elite. But now if you're going to put him at safety, or you're going to put him at CB2, well, like that's more of a pressure. And also, you got to like the reality with like losing Josh Sweat and losing Milton Williams. Like, you lose guys on the front line that were stalemates, that might not have been first team all pro guys, but that certainly helped a guy like Jalen Carter. I mean,
yeah,
you're losing those guys. That's a big, like, you're asking a lot of guys to really fill in shoes. And typically, and this is my point, is that in the history of the NFL, that usually doesn't translate into another championship. It probably is going to, you're obviously, barring a disaster, you're going to make the playoffs. But the reality is, like, it's a big ask to then go and to be like, oh yeah, like go out there and do what these guys have done last year. Unless you have that like elite stability from the front office, which you obviously do. You have coordinators. Yeah, you have one. The head coach sometimes can be a bit of a goon, and a quarterback, when with good talent around him. I mean, he's like obviously shows that he can be an elite quarterback. But like, what happens if some of those offseason moves don't work? What happens if one side of the field is getting exposed on defense, on one side of the back end? What happens? That's where you look towards the elite quarterback head coach combination. That's where you look for those guys, like, hey, we need you guys. I mean, at times when Kansas City won that Super Bowl in 2023, it was like, hey, we need you guys. Like, that was one of the more the worst Kansas City teams in the Patrick Mahomes era. But it's like Mahomes and Reed, like, that's what makes the difference. And then you put on top of that Spagnuolo, and then you put on Brett Veach. Like all that has to mix. We have recipe, but it is a big ask for a lot of those guys, because you're able to like put a roster together with a good veteran roster. Like, yeah, like we've seen teams that go out there like they did. But what happens when you lose those guys? I mean, that's like there's a lot of question marks.
definitely a lot of question marks. Yeah, I think it's going to be a hell of a ride. How many wins do you have the Eagles getting this year? I have them going 12-5.
I would say about 13-4 would be a good number.
Okay.
But I would say 12 to 13 wins. I think 13 is probably for a team coming off a Super Bowl win, probably on the high end. I would say I don't think you're wrong to say about 12. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the last topic that I wanted to talk about, and this is the one I'm most excited to talk about.
Right.
Is season. We've been hearing about Cincinnati. We're hearing about Joe Burrow. Super Bowl at the Super Bowl during the Super Bowl festivities. That that whole week he sat up there, and I forget what show it was, but it was like, yeah, if the Eagles are doing it, like, why can't we pay these guys? And they pay T. Higgins, they pay Jamar Chase. As a little bit of a shocker because ultimately Cincinnati has not shown, similar to Dallas, they have an owner GM's type of situation, a type of belief system that, like, hey, how we did in 30 to 40 years ago, we could still do it like that today. And recently, they were able to get Trey Hendrickson a new contract. He returned to practice. Cincinnati's a fascinating team.
Yeah,
because they missed the playoffs at 9-8. Joe Burrow arguably had the best season of his career. If you look at Cincinnati, if you look at what Cincinnati had done, they went like, I think, 3-4. They might have went 3-4 in games that they scored over 30 points. They finished 9-8. Teams that have, I had saw some the teams that have had the similar offensive production typically go 13-4, and they finish 9-8.
Yeah.
So if you look at Cincinnati, Mitch, do you think now that they signed Trey Hendrickson and with still a bunch of concerns on the defense? Obviously, they kicked Lou Amaroma to the curb, and they hired Al Golden now to be the defensive coordinator. Do you think Cincinnati, what do you think is the best case for Cincinnati? Do you think that they make the playoffs? What do you think is the best and worst case scenario for Cincinnati?
Well, it's going to be tough for them this year because Steelers got better and the Ravens got better. So right there alone, they're going to be the third team in that division. So right there and then, I don't see them making the playoffs. But there's one comparison I want to make here, and I'm a basketball fan. Everyone knows I'm a basketball fan at heart.
Yep.
The Cincinnati Bengals are like the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings are all fast or all gas, no break. They don't have a defense. They can score all the points and look where they end up every single year. That's the same thing with Cincinnati. But here's the thing with Cincinnati, though. They do have a Joe Burrow. They do have a Jamar Chase. They don't have that protection that Joe Burrow needs. Like Joe Burrow, his whole game is just standing in the pocket. That's the majority of his game. Stand in the pocket, throw for 4,000, 5,000 yards a season. And he's in MVP conversation every single year. When you don't have that protection, it's going to be tough. Remember when he got sacked 9 times and he still won? The Bengals still won and got sacked 9 times.
Yeah.
So I'm like, first of all, it's not even Madden. That feels like Madden numbers to me. 1. 2, it's just like they're the biggest overrated. They're the most overrated team in the NFL right now. That's my take. I'm sticking by it. They don't have a defense. Their offensive line is garbage, and that's it. They're the most overrated team in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, I think I might differ a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not sold on Pittsburgh. I think if you look at what Pittsburgh, they were put in a position where they had to sign Aaron Rodgers. I don't think they wanted to. One of the first things that Aaron Glenn did at the coach of the Jets was like, get this guy out of the building. We want this guy out of here. And listen, at this point is, is Mike Tomlin looking to save his job? I'm not really sure. I think Pittsburgh has some type of some deep-seated fear of being, maybe 3-14. I mean, listen, like, we all have to do it sometimes. That's how you get the number 1 overall pick and number 2 overall pick. Just start over. I'm not really that sold on Pittsburgh, but I will say this about Cincinnati. Because Trey Hendrickson was the big talk about this summer, was signing him, and that was the big. They ultimately made it work. And the guy had 17.5 sacks.
Yeah,
and he accounted for about 48% of all sacks on
Right.
the Bengals. That's a big level of production. My concern with Cincinnati is that do they get that level of, does it actually make a difference? Because last year, I mean, we could talk about how they had 17. He had 17 and a half sacks, 40% of all sacks on the team. Yet they were still 32nd in total defense. They were still the worst defense in terms of points allowed. So the question is that isn't that really going to make any difference today? And the question is, yeah.
No,
go ahead.
you go. Okay. So for me, I don't know if this is a hot take or not. Trey Hendrickson is not coming back to the Bengals after this season. He's gone. I feel like he's going to want more money. This is going to be a prove-it year for him. He's going to want to get as much sacks, as much stats as he can so he can up his bag and then go somewhere else. I don't see a future with Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati. I don't. If he stays there after this season, prove me wrong, but I think go get a bag. Look what happened with Micah Parsons, right? He won a Super Bowl. He went to New England, right, for the bag. He got his stuff, and now I think he's injured right now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I think Trey Hendrickson's gone after this season.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that since Cincinnati. I mean, it's listen. Since Cincinnati is not a. I'm like, listen. Did they get better? They're not a team like we were talking about Seattle. I've been hearing a lot about the Bears. It's like those teams. You can point at something that they've gotten better at. Cincinnati, it's all like if we play the exact style that we played, let's just hope that we can come out on top on two of them.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's that, like, sure, if you go back to their schedule last year, I mean that game against New England week 1, I mean that was a game that they that they more lost than as opposed to New England won. And that Baltimore game, a bad interception by Burrow, a missed field goal. They had one of their best offensive games, and yet they couldn't come out on top. And I'm saying, maybe you can take one of those games. Maybe you can find a way to win one of those games. But I'm telling you, I mean, if you look at, you're asking a lot for Joe Burrow. You're asking a lot on Joe Burrow's plate. And you can sit around and be like, we're not going to lose 8 games this year because Joe is going to find a way to get us 1 or 2 of them, and we're going to get into the wild card. We might even compete for a division at 10-7, or maybe at 11-6. I'm telling you that if you put that much, if your defense is that much of a liability, I mean, they have Cleveland week 1 and they have Jacksonville week 2. I mean, you'd suspect that, they would go 2-0. But I mean, let's not forget that defense can get weird. And I'm not sure what level of Trey Hendrickson's production is actually makes the defense better, or is it just, I mean, and because ultimately it's like with the Cowboys, I mean, you can Jerry is definitely Jerry is getting a lot of slack today. But let's actually like ask the question of like, are some of these pass rushers, do they actually make the defense better, or are they just situationally really good and they're statistically gaudy? I think that's ultimately the question. And listen, I get why Cincinnati did this. You don't want Joe Burrow to do the same thing that Carson Palmer did and be like, I'm not playing here anymore. Like, I'm done. I'm not, like, I will retire. Like, if you won't trade me, I'm going to retire. And I don't think they want to have that happen. But it's a great move for Cincinnati. I think there's a lot of talking heads that'll be like they're a Super Bowl contending team. And I think they can go 10-7. I think that they will be the final wild card team in the AFC. But I don't know. I just this doesn't seem like a move that is that puts you over the edge. I think it might help here and there, but I still expect, the offense is going to probably have to go with the expectation. Like, we've got to score not only 28 points, but we probably got to score more than 28 points a game if we want to go and win. I see the Bengals making the playoffs as a wild card team, but as a Super Bowl contending team, I think the problems are only really going to begin for Cincinnati. But I think for now, it's that if you want to like, because you don't want to lose Joe Burrow, and if you want to keep Joe Burrow happy right now, you better make the playoffs this year. And I have them making the playoffs.
How many wild card teams again? 3? Is it 2 or 3?
I think there's 3. There's 4 division. Yeah.
Then I can see them. If there's 3, I can see them making a wild card. If there's 3.
Yeah.
If there's 2, no. I don't see them making a wild card. It depends on that 3rd slot.
Yeah. The north, south, east, west. Yeah. So yeah, there's now 3. Yeah. Because I know there's 7 teams now in the 7 teams now that go. Yeah. And it wouldn't surprise me if I see them as the 7th seed. But I don't know, Mitch. I don't know about the long term. And I'd love to go Super Bowl with Cincinnati. I mean, I would love that for that, like a small market Midwest franchise. Like, we're tired of the Chiefs now. Everyone's like, has Chiefs fatigue, but let's not forget, it's like, when the Chiefs were a franchise that literally hadn't been to a conference championship game since 1970. And when Mahomes came around, first year, they're in a possible position to win that game against New England. So, like, the idea of like a quarterback can change an entire franchise. Kansas City has seen that. I would like to see Joe Burrow win with Cincinnati. And you'd hate for a franchise like that to lose a guy like that, because like you don't always get Green Bay is a little bit of an outlier, but you just don't always get a guy that just falls right on your lap,
Yep.
But all right, well, that's all that I had today. Thanks.
Remember, hold on really quick. The last time they were in the Super Bowl was in actually 2022. Where they lost to the Rams 23-20. So that was the last time they were actually in the Super Bowl. So for me, I don't see them getting back there. I really don't. You got Buffalo. You got the Ravens. I'm a really big fan right now of what Pittsburgh has done. I know you and I are on different sides of the spectrum right now, but it's just like I could see them making the wild card. I could see them making probably a first round. But other than that, I don't see them going anywhere. So it's just like the Bengals, the numbers are stacked against them, and that's all I got to say. That's all I got to say.
And that's the trouble that a team like Cincinnati has. That as an organization is that, and this is similar in baseball with the Washington Nationals, is that they won a title in 2019, and yet they kept Davey Martinez for like. They recently, a couple months ago, just fired the guy. And listen, as a manager, sometimes it clicks for a year, maybe a year or 2, but it's very clear that it had been working for a while. And for a team like Washington, with weird ownership, winning a championship or going to a World Series is probably sometimes the worst thing that is probably the worst thing that can happen, because then they get the sense of like, what we're doing actually is working. We went to a Super Bowl recently. We won a championship recently. We know what we're doing here. That's probably the worst thing that a cheap dysfunctional franchise can get is a sense of like, we're actually doing the right thing. Because ultimately, I think the best thing maybe for like a team like the Cowboys is keep losing. You just got to keep losing. You don't want to go to a Super Bowl because then Jerry's gonna keep doing his thing again. Because sometimes in sports you get hot, and that Cincinnati team they got hot, and ultimately it's like they got hot, and like that's what happens in sports sometimes. Is that sometimes like I don't know. Sometimes weird things can happen, but I think arguably sometimes that going to that Super Bowl is maybe the worst thing that could have happened ultimately, because it like solidifies their way of doing business as like, hey, we can point at results, but listen, they didn't come away with a trophy. At least I can point at Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers and been like, yeah, they do everything they could have done to support Aaron when he was in Green Bay? Maybe not, but at least they got the trophy, because God forbid if like they didn't win that Super Bowl against Pittsburgh, well, shit, like they'd still be doing the things that they're doing today. But listen, this is going to be an interesting season this year, Mitch. I'll tell you that much.
Yep. So, yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I had fun.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. We'll be back here next Friday. Thanks everyone for watching, and please to subscribe. Like and subscribe to the Hardcore Sports Network. It's great having everyone. Take care.
All right, guys. Catch you all later, and peace.